Okay, good afternoon, evening, morning, everybody. Welcome back. Good to see you all. Today we've got two papers and a film. We'll come on to that in a moment. Our next meeting will be in a fortnight, as usual, 29th of May, where we have Patience Young, Richard Spencer and Steve Gardner. But please take note that we won't have any meetings in June, just to confuse you all. It's partly because we'll be involved in the Limerick conference at the beginning of June, and then later on in June, Martin and I need some time off. So no meetings in June, but you'll hear from us with the July schedule when we get round to it. So in a fortnight, we do meet, and then after that, no meetings for a month. Everybody got that? Good. We're going to go straight in now with Paul Cowdell, it's our first time with Paul, well, his first time with us. It's good to see you, Paul. Then after that, Ciara Thompson going to give us part 2 of her Lullabies presentation, because she didn't have time to play some of the stuff in the first session. And then the third thing today is film from the Ozarks in 1954, one of my favorites. You'll find out why when we get there. So are we ready, Paul? There we go.
We are, yes.
That looks good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Righto, this isn't new research. It won the Folklore Society Student Prize a while back. I've not yet published it, but I'm returning to it now because I'm increasingly as interested in how we get to know things and the limits to what we know as I am in what we actually do know, hence this. So, Francis Collinson is an important collector, I think, of English folk song in the later 20th century. He links the Edwardians to the later revival. And in the 40s and 50s, he was musical director for the BBC Home Service Rural Affairs programme, Country Magazine. And his commission was to find and record folk songs, which he then arranged for broadcast by the resident sextet. Six volumes of his English material are at the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library. And since I first did this research, they've been scanned and made available online. During interviews, often including by phone, Collinson noted down melodies. He sometimes took down words too, but he also had singers send them on later. Consequently, the collection contains several copies of each song in varying states of neatness and completeness. In 1950, he noted songs from a James or Jimmy Booker of Warnham in Sussex. They met at least twice, and Collinson noted at least 6 songs. The manual index to the English material credits one song to a Mr. Brooke, probably because of Collinson's handwriting, and omits another altogether, Horn Fair, which was published in the Journal of the English Folk Dance and Song Society. Now, digitization has mostly cleared up those questions, but we can't be definitive about James Booker's repertoire. 72 years ago this week, on the 10th of May 1950, he sang 4 or 5 songs. We know he sang The Dairymaid, Spencer the Rover, The Little Lousy Tailor, and The Farmers of Old England from the manuscripts. But Country Magazine broadcast Cyril Tucker singing Horn Fair on the 28th of May, and Stanley Goodman noted that it was sung to Mr. Collinson 2 weeks before, so it was likely also collected at the same time. Digitization hasn't quite resolved all of this because the website linked to the Horn Fair manuscript currently takes you to the song that we're going to talk about, Farmers of Old England. On the 25th of July, 1950, Collinson seems only to have noted the week before Easter, and it's unclear whether Mr. Booker sang anything else then. He died the following year. This limited evidence suggests a fairly typical Southern repertoire, songs familiar from the Copper family, who Collinson also recorded. The popularity of Spencer the Rover may explain why the manuscript contains only the melody of that, while Horn Fair became more widely noted locally after the BBC broadcast. But Farmers of Old England, Roud 21867, isn't known elsewhere. It hadn't been assigned a round number when I first looked at it, and the astronomical number indicates scarcity. It's a unique record, almost certainly never published. It appears twice in the manuscripts. The neat copy of the melody bearing the note "words to be sent to me," and the other, this one here, with a full text. It's an agricultural protest song, pointing to the poor wages and conditions of agricultural labourers in Kent and Sussex, and contrasting their conditions with those enjoyed by farmers. Some phrases are quite general, while others, particularly on wages, are highly specific. Collinson wrote, "This tune also used for the Folkestone murder." Don't know if you can see that on there, or the one on the right. It's unclear whether he meant James Booker also sang that song, or more likely just that it provided the tune for these words. Now, 19th century protest songs can be grouped roughly to reflect changing conditions over the period. They provide a way of understanding not only the conditions faced by agricultural labourers, but also their changing political responses to them. Firstly, there are general songs about the realities of rural life. Many can also be read as a paean to it, meaning they could be used in varying social settings without necessarily betraying the singer's real thoughts. Many appeal to a golden age when the agricultural labourer was much better appreciated, like an early 19th century broadside. "But now the times are altered much, and the poor are quite done o'er, which cruelty did ne'er abound when this old hat was new." Now, such ideas informed another group of songs about specific circumstances. "The Labouring Man," Round 1156, mentions conditions confronting agricultural labourers after the Napoleonic Wars, but appeals at the same time to former days when labourers could live neat and clean. And that element declines in songs about specific historic incidents. The poor record for the 1830s swing riots is suggestive in this regard. Another unique record, Round 17212, definitely relates to machine breaking at Usselbury in Hampshire and deals with the ensuing trial of the Usselbury lads. It concludes by hoping for better wages, but not by appealing to the past. And the scantness of that 1830 record may have a bearing. But the best documented tradition of 19th century agricultural protest songs is the Revolt of the Field, the wages movement that led to the first National Union of Agricultural Labourers. That movement lasted through the 1870s, but had a longer impact. It spawned at least two songbooks, one from its first flourishing of national recruitment, the other from the early 20th century resurgence of unionism. Now, my hypothesis was that this song, I'll put up the legible words here, belongs to the 1870s period. I aim to test it against the available evidence internally in the song and externally in the history of agricultural unionism to try and date it. So briefly on the tune first, the Folkestone murder is well known across the Southeast. It clearly postdates the 1856 murder it commemorates, but the tune could have become attached to these words later. Without evidence that this tune was intended when these words were written, we can't be sure that the words postdate 1856. But it's fair to say that the tune suggests after 1856, and that likelihood increases with the other evidence, I think. The most important thing about the tune is that it's a good popular come-all-you tune, making it a likely candidate for being used for other words. Tunes specified for other union songs show definite trends. The later songbook specifies hymn tunes and tunes to patriotic songs mostly. The 1873 songbook, however, cites more traditional and contemporary popular tunes. So if the tune probably places our song after 1856, tune trends within union songbooks suggest it probably belongs in the 1870s rather than the 1900s, which is largely supported by the text. Earlier protest songs invoke a mythical past. Later songs are more attached to specific circumstances. Ours has some themes with antecedents in the earlier songs. The farmers drink their wine, their wives and daughters shine, echoes broadside ballads on the new-fashioned farmer that highlight the fashionable distance farmers have come from their labourers, often by drawing attention to the current fineries of the farmers' womenfolk. But the conclusion is different. In an earlier ballad, the narrator hopes no one will think amiss because it's the farmer's pride that lowers wages. But rather than appealing to good sense to restore natural order, this song draws a direct conclusion about economics. The men who earn the wealth for them in poverty doth pine, The political consciousness has changed. And a similar process can be seen in other more generalized ideas here. There's a new bitterness to a line about working themselves to skin and bone while they're still alive. But again, it's explicitly political. It leads to the workhouse and the pauper's grave. So that union in the penultimate verse is the workhouse, not an agricultural union. Lines about gentlemen visitors finding the countryside beautiful hark back to the earlier songs, but their political starkness, they'd say that it was slavery and I'm sure it would be true, is new. Most of the complaints are specific. Has a defined locale, Kent and Sussex too. It expects class antagonisms. The farmers are at their tricks again. It specifies the wage reduction demanded by farmers, 18 pence a week, and draws out the financial implications of this. 9 or 10 shillings a week is all there's left. It also refers to standing labourers down unpaid during wet weather. These are precise, but even the more general descriptions are far removed from utopian appeals to some natural order. Yes, the labourers are betrayed by the farmers, but the farmers' pigs are better fed than many a labouring man has a bluntness suggesting this won't be rectified by appeals to the past. But the song doesn't recommend what the labourers should do about it, which may be significant. So the textual indications suggest it doesn't belong with the earlier songs. So to understand this later context, we need to look quickly at agricultural unionism, the revolt of the field, and its musical traditions. The key moments, the emergence in 1872 of the National Agricultural Labourers Union, NALU. The first such national body, its importance has tended to sideline those local factors which fermented it and local unions which didn't join. Local unions were already being formed and industrial action taken in response to price rises in the 1860s, like the Kent Agricultural Labourers Protection Association of 1866-8, which collapsed in the face of farmers' hostility. A general upsurge in radical activity continued into the 1870s. Key factors promoting unionism were responses to the 1871 Trade Union Act and the impetus of industrial action for a 9-hour working day, a demand that agricultural unions later dropped in favour of wage agitation. In 1871, there were efforts to unionise labourers in the Midlands. Early in 1872, primitive Methodist preacher Joseph Arch was approached to help form a union. A meeting and strike in Wellesbourne, demonstration in Leamington, led to the formation of the Warwickshire Agricultural Labourers Union, which spread to neighbouring counties. NALU was formed in May, inspiring other local organisations. The Kent Labourers Union was revived, later becoming the Kent and Sussex Labourers Union. These unions published widely, and Alfred Simmons, the head of the Kent and Sussex Labourers Union, was himself a journalist who turned his paper over to the union. Nonconformist dissenting religion also played a role. One Kent labourer said he heard of the Warwickshire Union and, quote, knew the day of redemption had come, unquote. So it's hardly surprising that agitational songs were produced, even though the 1873 songbook contained only one directed to be sung to a hymn tune. Some hymn adaptations in the later songbook, however, may date to the earlier period. There was a deliberate appeal to the chapel and village culture of the labourers, their singing traditions, and the need for their own propaganda. As one song put it, whene'er it can, the rich man's press ignores the wrongs we bear. There are lots of references to singing and music at demonstrations. A brass band entertained an 1883 amalgamated meeting of Kent branches of the Kent and Sussex Union. At least one song from the first songbook appeared as a broadside, indicating some mass popular appeal. Song texts address the hardships endured by agricultural labourers and usually emphasised joining the union. NALU wasn't just numerically successful. Wages rose 20% before 1874, and union policy of assisting immigration may have helped here. But prices began to fall and wages with them. When Suffolk farmers rejected demands for a shilling rise in 1874, a strike was called. Farmers locked out all the union men in the area, with up to 10,000 possibly thrown out of work. NALU paid out £24,000 in strike pay. Its total subscription income for the previous year was £21,000. It was broken by the lockout and forced to withdraw. Membership halved within a year. By 1880, it was down to around a quarter of 1874's membership. It struggled on. Split in 1874, it was a spent force. It was 30 years before a comparable national union arose. and the 20th century National Union of Agricultural and Allied Workers based itself explicitly on the lessons of the 1870s and produced an agitational songbook, which still contained traditional popular tunes, but more hymn tunes. Arch's dominance has skewed appraisal of the National Union's relations with local bodies. Arch criticised the independent locals for not joining NALU, which was politically sound, but it's disingenuous to blame them for NALU's failings. NALU's attitudes to the local unions weren't always constructive. Its approach to branches of the Kent and Sussex Union may actually have encouraged Symonds's organisation to stay independent. The Kent Union was revived in Shoreham, Kent in 1872, spread quickly across West and Mid-Kent, reached 5,000 members in 6 months. The Kent Union agreed with the National Union in principle, but criticised NALU's poaching of branches. By 1874, NALU had recruited several of West Kent's branches for its West Kent district, which then collapsed with the Union. In 1873, the Kent Union expanded into Sussex, although Kent remained its stronghold, assisting emigration, organising an extensive charitable and benefit network. By such self-help measures and cautious leadership, it was in a strong position in late 1878, when membership was about 14,000, for a concerted lockout of Union men. After bad seasons and falling prices, Kent farmers met in 1878 to discuss how to reassert authority. At their Canterbury meeting, which called for the lockout, farmers demanded an immediate weekly wage reduction of 1 shilling and 6pence to a minimum weekly wage of 15 shillings. Some farmers were reportedly determined to smash up the union. The dispute dragged on over the winter, cost the union £9,000, but the farmers couldn't lock out enough labourers to force the issue. Free emigration passages resolved a bitter conflict over evictions, effectively undermining the lockout. Farmers slowly took labourers back, many at the old rates. Although financially battered, union membership rose to 16,000 and its finances were restored within 2 years. All of which gives points which may be significant here. The local union represented Kent and Sussex, but concentrated in the former, as in the song's repeated formulation, here down in Kent and Sussex too. Connecting them this way makes it more likely from Symonds's union than NALU's West Kent district. More definite is mention of the 18 pence per week reduction in wages, which we know was the farmers' demand. This coincided with continued increases in farmers' rents, which must have been passed on to labourers, suggesting that the song's 9 or 10 shillings a week after rent may not have been an exaggeration. Finally, it's worth noting that union membership really was just under 15,000 when the lockout began. Given what we know of Symonds's union, this song matches conditions at the start of the 1878 lockout. But we have no other evidence of this song being sung, although that's not so alarming. The Usselbury Lads example is useful. It was sung for a specific event and seems not to have survived much beyond that. Of the 1873 songbook, it's been said the Union songs faded with the Union. But songs from the second songbook are known from oral tradition. Walter Pardon sang 3 was the only English source for them, oral source for them. Thanks to extensive interviewing, which of course we don't have for James Booker, we know Walter Pardon's family's role in the local union and that he had a copy of that second songbook. So a single source for a song like this is quite plausible. No songbook is known from the Kent and Sussex Labourers' Union, although we do know that Alfred Symonds quoted verse at Union galas. If a songbook existed, it's never turned up. More awkwardly, unlike most NALU songs, this doesn't even mention a union. If it does relate to 1878-9, it may have been an independent production rather than a union one, in which case a published version may never be forthcoming. So my hypothesis is consistent with the historical record, but not proven. Research continues into possible sources and transmission, but these may not provide any results. The song may not relate to the 1878 lockout after all. But outside of finding a published version or other records of oral transmission, our best hope is going to be through detailing Mr. Booker's biography, perhaps with the help of surviving relatives. I drew a blank here, and further work is required. So I think it's a strong case, but it remains a hypothesis. The circumstantial evidence, I think, is enough to direct further research, and I think it indicates that the direction of the research is appropriate. But it's not yet sufficient to state definitely that this is the history of this song. 15 years ago, I thought this was an argument for not offering this for publication anyway. I leave it to you to decide whether I have become more nuanced or more cynical in no longer quite feeling that, and think that it's actually probably an argument for offering it for publication somewhere, but I leave that really to you. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. That was great. Great start today. And great time. We're ahead of time. This is the first time ever, I think, we've been ahead of time. So we do have time for some questions. Could I just clarify something for you? You talk about the 1873 songbook.
Yes.
And the 1901 was the other one?
Yes.
What are they're the Agricultural Union, the
yes.
national.
The first one is, hang on, I haven't got the page printed of that. It's the Howard Evans Songs for Singing at Agricultural Labourers Meetings. Hang on, let me get this. Well, there's Howard Evans Songs for Singing at Agricultural Labourers Meetings, which is not dated, but certainly belongs to 1872 to 4. Sorry, I'm just seeing if I can.
Okay, you put it.
Yeah,
put it.
Yes, I can. Yeah, there are records to that.
Tell me later, anyway.
Yes,
yeah.
But so there is that kind of record. Also, I just see Vic has asked in the chat if there is a broadside of this song. Not as far as I'm aware, Vic, and I haven't seen one. Again,
but
sorry,
we've still only indexed half the broadsides that are in the country, so there's plenty of time yet. John Baxter's got his hand up. Hi, John.
Hiya. Two things. One is to say, I think it would be useful to publish. There's a big thing in science about publishing negative results, because if you never publish negative results, we all end up doing the same things over and over again. So even if it's not completely cut and dried, it's always worth, I think, putting something into print. I wanted to ask about, have you done much newspaper searching? I know that I did a quick and dirty search before this meeting for the term the farmers of Old England, and there's a real peak in its occurrence in the 1870s. I don't fully understand the context, but it seems a slightly sneering tone to using that term to refer to farmers or agricultural labourers collectively. So it would be worth looking to see if there are any records in amateur singing events of people singing a song of that title or a variant of it. Sometimes you get descriptions which allow you to identify unequivocally the song. So I just say it'd be worth having a look at that.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, the newspaper research has mostly been that I've done on this has mostly been really around events specifically on the Kent and Sussex Labourers Union, but a wider dirty search on that I think would be fruitful, would certainly be useful.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's a lot more. There's newspapers coming online almost every day. So you have to keep going back and doing the same searches. And certainly 15 years ago, you wouldn't have had those resources at all, would you?
No. And actually, Rosie's, I mean, that's also related to the question that Rosie's just asked about the records of the various unions, because certainly the 1903 union is what ended up in Unite eventually. at the time, I had done a search through the TUC archives at London Met, and there was nothing showing up there. I'm also just kind of trying to pick up the threads again, really, and just trying to chase Kent Archives on this, but nothing that I've seen there either. So in terms of directly through the union, no. In part, perhaps because of that break between the 1870s and the 1903 union. Because when you, Reg Groves's history of the later union, Sharp and the Sickles, it kind of draws out very much. Everybody knows there's this historical link, but there's not really anything concrete between them. And in terms of the Kent and Sussex Labourers Union, that also, I mean, it survives into the 1880s, into the late 1880s, really with some strength, and then just it kind of folds in a reasonably strong position. But Alfred Simmons disappears completely. It's assumed that he emigrated. And a lot of the kind of publication archive, if you like, of that body just dissipates.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Paul. No other questions. On the question of publication, I can just put in an advert here. The Ballad Partners' next volume will be called Thirsty Work, and has a subtitle, which I can't remember. But anyway, it'll be based on talks given at these TSF Zoom meetings, and should be out fairly soon. So we'll let you know about that, and maybe this talk can come out in the one following. Right, we're going to move on to lullabies in Ireland. I love the fact that our meetings nowadays are so varied. We can go from agricultural songs in the 1870s to Irish lullabies. I can't see you, Ciara. I hope you're still there.
I am still here.
There you are. Okay, over to Ciara, who's going to give us part 2 of her lullabies talk.
Okay. So, hello, everyone. This slideshow hasn't really changed at all. It'll be the same slides as last time, but we're going to look at a few of the other examples that I brought to the table that we just didn't have time to go into last time. So just to sort of remind ourselves what that presentation consisted of last time, we were looking at the personal expression in Irish traditional lullabies, and looking into first of all, the definition of lullabies. They're most functionally speaking a lulling song between a caregiver and a cared for, most notably between a parent and a child. They also often bring in magical, mythical, otherworldly story properties, which come through very strongly in the Irish traditional context. Notable characteristics that you often see in lullabies, originally a vocal unaccompanied piece, lots of repeated formulae and many different elements, stylized representation of sighing or weeping to either imitate that child's heightened sense of distress and discontent, or as well to personify sort of these feelings of unrest or anxiety coming up for the caregiver as well. There's very strong balladry and storytelling coming through in lullaby repertoire, and you find general repertoire coming into play in the lullaby context, as far as different ballads being sung in lullaby context as well, which is really interesting. You have the communicating of direct expression in an intimate manner, finding that formalized yet intense experience in that confiding space of just between yourself as the caregiver and whoever you're caring for, a child, a patient, whatever it might be, being able to open up in that area. And then having this really hypnotic movement or action, we often see rocking or swaying or whatever the cultural context might be, there is also this physical embodiment involved. There's a great debate of, are these frivolous lilts? Are these simple little ditties that aren't very noteworthy, or do they have a deeper well of layers of interpretation and meaning and value? Through my research, I continuously put forward that there are many, many deeper layers to go into that stitch them into society. Notably, I think they are very emotionally evocative. They firstly show that unconditional love for one's child, a nostalgia and longing or bittersweetness of one's childhood and sense of parental love and security. There's this calm over one's worries for their child's well-being, sort of bringing yourself down as well as your child, and bringing out the stresses of parenthood, expressing different frustrations that you might have in the moment. They also are a reminder of the inevitable growth and separation from one's child as they grow up, they become more independent, giving the caregiver a space to deal with and accept that truth in life. Positive or negative, whatever emotions come out, they're leading to this reassurance and relief and relaxation, ultimately bringing a sense of calm and peace to all of the participants in the room. So some examples. Last time, I spent a whole lot of time talking about all those wonderful points that I just sped through just now. So I only had time to talk about this one lullaby, Rocking the Cradle, that nobody owns. It's a great example. Since we went into it in detail last time, we won't spend time on it on this one, but it is one of the only examples that came up through my research that is directly coming from the perspective of a man lulling a child. And this one is specifically quite extreme in showing his dismal sort of state and not really wanting to be there for the child, but knowing that he needs to be there for the child because of the circumstances. In this case, his wife is out carousing at night and she only married him for money. And so he's left to care for this child that, as it says, rocking the baby that's never my own. So rocking someone else's child just because it's this sort of sense of duty. That's just the audio example. I thought someone was unmuted for a second. So we won't go through that audio example since we went through it last time, but these were just some of the points of analysis that came through with that lullaby. There are minimal vocables and endearments, so not a lot of affection coming through. The narrator declares himself as an old man, stating that he's alone. He doesn't claim paternity on the child, whereas a lot of lullaby repertoire would say, you're my dear one, my lovely, bringing this sort of parental claim to the child. He's portraying the wife as absent and opportunist, and warns the child to learn from his experiences and be wary about the future, his future child's legitimacy. And so this goes on to present overall feelings of dismay, self-pity, and resentment. And as I said before, this is quite an extreme example of quite a dismal lulling context. So we can look at another example, probably one of the best known Irish traditional lullabies, which is Shaheen Shaho. And I'll give you a listen to this one. We won't go all the way through the song, but I'll give you a listen to a couple of verses. This is in Irish, so we'll run through a quick play-by-play of the English translation in a minute here. So.
شاهین شاه مستوره ملامه میاد کام کلام مخدن تلموه شاهین شاه نخمرم تنه مستوری نلبن نخلدم رو Sloan agasonas akhi hadakar Shabana fikte August tegur vimla Teriga khalagan yega balo
Okay, well, stop it there and talk about it a little bit. So again, this is in Irish, so just looking at the lyrics, and I realize that there's a lot of words on the screen, so I'm happy to send out these lyrics to anyone who would like to look at them in further detail. But so Shaheen Shaho are the famous Irish vocables. This would be the vocables that are coming up in a lot of different lullaby material. So it's saying, my child is my treasure, my jewel without guile, my share of the world, these very vibrant, evocative endearments toward the child, and how great is the delight that my treasure is in his bed, sleeping without sorrow. So thank goodness he's asleep, he's quiet in the crib, sorted for the evening. My child of my bosom, may the sleep thrive within you, happiness and luck be even in store for you. So hoping, giving out wishes and praying for happiness and luck and fortune for the child. May the blessing of God, of the God's Son, and the love of his nurse be with you. Go to sleep without start until day. Sleep all through the night. Don't wake up in the middle of the night. Don't wake me up in the middle of the night. So then we go into a bit of this otherworldly atmosphere, describing on the hill of the She, the fairies are shining under the fair moon of spring, playing their games. And here they come eastward to call to my child, wishing to lure him into the great fort. This is depicting something that taps into a really strong part of Irish folklore and tradition, the changelings and the fairy kidnappings. So even though it's this beautiful, they're shining and dancing at night, you can see this very enchanting image. It's actually rather sinister, and their intention is to take the child with them into the other world, into their fairy fort. So then the caregiver in this says, I call thee my heart, they shall not entice you by dint of their tricks or the sweetness of their music. I am by your side, praying for your blessings. Shaheen, my child, you will not go with them. So trying to give them strength and stay in this world. Don't go to the other world with the fairies. Then we switch over into this very interwoven, this parallel pre-Christian and Christian tradition happening in Ireland that we see. And we have a verse where instead of fairies, it's angels. So before my darling, sweet and gentle, kind angel eyes are gazing upon him with great strong love, inviting him away, for heaven would be more delightful were he to go with them. So again, this sense of these enchanting otherworldly figures enticing you to actually go into the other world with them. And then we have the last verse, treasure of my heart, lie down in your bed. Beside your mama, you still will abide. God does not grudge me my play and my pleasure, my heaven on earth, along with my darling. So I'm just abundant with such luck to be able to have you with me, you know, and just stay with me all night. So there we have that quick analysis of this song. We don't want to play that again. So from that, what do we get from that look into that song? We have, again, these famous vocables, very just iconic of Irish traditional song is that Shaheen Shaho. And with that, you get this connotation of a lot of affection and unconditional love. We have this vibrant and rich sense of endearments for the child being expressed. There are prayers and wishes for health, happiness, and continuous sleep throughout the night. No upsets at all. Description of enchanting displays by fairies and angels that are, while they're beautiful, they're trying to take you into the other world, take you away with them. The mother encourages the child to stay by her side, safe and healthy, rather than going with these supernatural beings, because in the folklore and all of the traditions surrounding this, it's very tricky and often unsuccessful to get the child or whoever was abducted back into the human world from the other world. This sort of comes into these themes of rich and intense love for the child, such as my most precious possession, the jewel of my heart. I think it was just the most precious thing in my life is my child, you know. So we have the imagery of the fairies and the angels, again, talking about that parallel depiction of Christian and pre-Christian ideologies coming through in the one song. They're imaginative and stimulating, and an explanation for the loss of a child. Often, if a child had died early on, or if someone died for some unknown or unusual circumstance, it was often maybe pinned on the fairies, that, oh, they went away with the fairies. It wasn't that they are gone, it's that they're in the other world. This also embodies the mother's fears and anxieties and possibly frustrations as well. You can perhaps look at it as, rather than fear of the fairies, maybe using the fairies as a threat of, if you don't go to sleep, they are going to come and take you away. So be quiet and go to sleep now, you know. So the mother's worries are evident, this need for prayer, hope, and well wishes. If you need that prayer, that entails that there's something that's bothering you that you're trying to address. And she's stating that the child will not go with these forces, and just really giving the child strength to stay with her in this world, you know. So from this, we get a great sense of huge emotional expression and depiction of belief and ideologies coming through. And it really gives us a great sense of that caregiver's state as they're singing. So we'll look at another example here. This is Hawaiian, rather different. So we'll give you a quick listen to this one. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I hope that I won't go through the English translation on this side, but I hope that while that was playing, you got a chance to read through that. So we'll go straight on to looking at the analysis of this song. So the vocables are rather unusual. This is one of the only times that I've seen Hawaiian as vocables being used in a lullaby in the Irish context. You see it a little bit in the Scottish context coming through in lullabies and walking songs and things like that, but not so much in the Irish context. So that's interesting. The endearments, again, we have this sense of affection coming through very strongly. On Waubau, the evil spirit, this is a really interesting one that connects into tradition and folklore and even deeper directly into mythology. So the Waubau has very strong and close connections with the Banshee and this very ominous female figure, otherworldly figure, the Banshee. And the words, the name Waubau, directly connected to the word Baib, which would be one of the 3 war goddesses of Ireland. And this is where we get Baib also meaning crow, and that connection between the war goddesses and their relationship with crows, and that harbinger, ominous sort of impending death sort of context. So having the Waubau come through in being named specifically in a lullaby is very significant. And furthermore, saying Iskamaha Waubau, and out with you, evil spirit, this expelling of this evil force that's in that context. We find in the story that the singer is not the mother, because through the lyrics we see the caregiver, the singer, saying that the mother is external to singing. The mother is somewhere along the beach or away with blind Philip, depending on the variation that you're looking at. We also have a cautionary anecdote of the priest's horse in the blacksmith's garden. And if you don't get the priest's horse out of the blacksmith's garden, he'll trash it. So this sort of, if this happens, then this will happen, this sort of putting out educational frameworks for the child. What we get from this is this sense of strong protection, this banishment of evil, again, through that Iskamaha Waubau line. We have confirmation of affection for the child. We have heavy imagery coming through in this song, talking about what the mother is doing, where she's going, the horse in the garden. We also have 2 other verses in a specific variation that talk about the father being away on the sea, doing his work on the sea, and thanks be to God, he'll be home on Tuesday. We'll welcome him back then. And then as well, a very funny one that is, what will we do with a broken down babe? We'll make a carriage out of a broken lobster pot. So this sort of playful imagery that comes through and gives us a sense of the landscape and the community and the sort of work paraphernalia that would have been around that contributes to the imagery and the lyrics there. So there we have that care and concern in the community and darker outcomes of life, preparing that child for what could happen. This is specifically coming through in the mother's activities. If the mother has gone off with blind Philip, and I don't know who he is the line, then that's this sense of abandonment, abandoning the family, abandoning the community. But as well, if we look at that other variation, the mother's walking down the winding beach, that can give us sort of this interpretation of, is she going to come back? Is she alive, or has she gone away with the sea? This sort of metaphorical sense of passing on. We get a sense of community and social dynamics through the song, as well as a warning to avoid destruction and mischief. So a lot of things coming through in not very many words. So now I understand that I don't have time for this last one. You would think with a second session I could get through all these examples, but I'll leave it for now. But just to say that this last example is very much leaning into that sense of heavy and detailed storytelling and layers of function as well. This song can be considered part of the general repertoire as well as a lullaby. And a lullaby hidden within the general repertoire. Avanuntius goes into a woman who has been stolen away by the fairies, and she is being used to nurse, to breastfeed the fairy babies. And she's concealing her plea for escape to this woman that's across the river through a lullaby that she's singing to the fairy child. And it goes into a lot of interesting detail of all of the steps that this person, that her husband has to go through in order to rescue her from this otherworld entrapment. So there's so many details in this. We won't play it now anyway, but so many details that come through. A mixture of Christian and pre-Christian ritual are in there. And just deeper currents of fear and entrapment and isolation coming through, which you can then sort of translate back into this role of motherhood, a new mother being isolated in that sense of putting the child to sleep night and night again. So I will finish up there, I think. I understand that we're running into the Q&A time, but just to say that these songs, through looking at these songs in this sense, we do get this really interesting matrix coming through, looking at the characteristics and traits coming through, the emotional expression that you can see, the evidence of belief, and what relationships are we seeing. And that can really situate the song and the people in the song and the community around it, and tell us how these seemingly simple lullabies that you sing to a child can just be so valuable for intangible cultural heritage, for parenting, for community, and so on. So I'll leave it at that, and we might have time for one or two questions.
Thank you, Ciara. Very nicely done. Very interesting. Vic, yes, we have got time for questions. Vic mentioned in the chat, and it occurred to me that the tune of the first Irish one you played was the same tune as the Rocking the Cradle who nobody owns. So I presume everybody noticed that. Are there standard tunes like that go across different lullabies, or do they all have different tunes with it?
It would be, that's great that you noticed that. That one specifically, Shaheen Shaho is just such a famous lullaby in the Irish traditional context, and it has been, the tune has been shared with several different sets of words. Rocking the Cradle that nobody owns, that one has a couple different, I think 2 different airs put to it. And the example that I played of Rocking the Cradle was Joe Heaney singing it, and he's noted in interviews that it's the same tune that he uses for both sets of lyrics. Rocking the Cradle being an English language lullaby, it's considerably newer than Shaheen Shaho. Shaheen Shaho has quite a bit more age on it, just looking at it cropping up in older texts. But yeah, so long story long, yes, you can share airs around, and that would happen frequently with that particular air.
Thank you. Abby's got his hand up. Have to say,
good presentation. I really like this, and I came again because I liked the first one, and so much I wanted to come again. But it was mentioned last time, any song can be a lullaby. It doesn't have to have all the elements as long as it functions as a lullaby. It could be murder or whatever. And that certainly there's always an exception to anything in folk song. Whatever anyone says, there's always an exception. And I was immediately thinking from what you said about Queer Bungle Rye, where we have a young man, a sailor, who accepts responsibility for a baby which he had nothing to do with at all. And so all of these elements can float back and forth and be anything. I think it's the situation, that these are situational before you can define it as this or that function. Otherwise, it could be anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's something that sort of ties into that last example that we really blasted through, that evanutheus. Depending on the context that you're looking at the song, you have it coming up as a general piece of Irish traditional song repertoire. And then in other contexts where you're specifically looking at fairy song, or the presence of the other world, or lullaby, it comes up in different contexts, and it can be used in those different contexts specifically. So yeah, absolutely. I love Queer Bungle Rye, actually. It's a great one for, again, this sort of male narrative, of explicitly male narrative, which doesn't come up very often with the caregiver-child relationship in Irish traditional song. Yeah, it's interesting, just what those different contexts can do to bring out different threads in the songs.
Thank you, Ciara. John Baxter was asking in the chat, do lullabies sung to babies differ from those sung to older children? I mean, they're probably not called lullabies if they're sung to older children, I don't know. But is there an age difference at all that you know of?
I mean, not that I know of. I think that definitely older children will understand the storytelling facets of the lullabies more readily than infants. When you're singing to an infant, really the storytelling is happening for the caregiver in the room. What's happening for the infant is more to do with the melody and that physicality, and that creating that sense of security, and that sense of calm, bringing them to sleep ultimately. But then once they get older and start to understand the world around them, that storytelling comes into play, and you can use that in various different ways. So, and that's one reason why I think lullabies have such rich potential to look at metaphor and allegory, just because you can express a lot of different things through a song, and express your own frustrations and worries and intense emotions in front of a child. Maybe they're not necessarily ready to hear that yet, but if you put it through those metaphors and everything, then you can still express what you want to express, but still engage that child, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think if there would be any notable difference, it would just be that older children songs would have more of a storytelling element in it.
Great, thank you, Ciara. Right, we're moving on now from Irish lullabies to Ballad Hunting in the Ozarks, 1954. One of my favorite bits of film, if we can get it to work. One of the reasons why I like this one is those of you who have seen the film from the 1950s in Suffolk, the Barley Mow film, will remember the song sung by Wickes Richardson about Fagin the cobbler, where he goes through the actions of shoemaking while he's singing. And it's always fascinated me, and I've never known where it came from. And this film from the Ozarks, made about the same time, mid-50s, has a song, the same song, with some of the same actions in it. And that's always got me puzzled. And I'm on the trail of this. It's only taken me 20 years so far. But it seems to come, don't quote me on this, from a play, a musical play, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Not exactly a pantomime, but a musical play based on Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves from the 1840s, where a man sings about having a wife that he doesn't get on with and goes through these actions. So it's remarkable if that's really true. But I'll let you know if I can prove it. But are we ready, Martin, to go back to the 1954 film?
Yeah, give me a moment and we'll get this going.
We can see it.
From the colleges and universities of the nation, CBS Television brings you The Search to know and understand man and his work, the search for a richer, happier life for all.
This is the University of Arkansas Fine Arts Center. I'm Charles Romine. In a few minutes, we're going to take off in this Jeep into the wilds of the Ozark Mountains. This is a detective story. We're going on an unusual search. We have a few clues to go on. The rest is deduction.
Choice was the young and fair, and I'll be true, true to my love, love if my love will be true to me. He gave the oldest a gay gold ring.
This is Mary Celestia Parler, professor of English, ballad hunter, and director of folklore research. The song she's listening to is called The Two Sisters.
Love if my love will be true to me.
The song you have just heard, we have every reason to believe is currently sung in Arkansas, although we have never collected it or recorded it. It is one of the oldest surviving British traditional ballads. It was collected by Samuel Pepys in 1650, but we know that it is much, much older than that. Now we are going out to try to find the great, great, great grandchild of this song as sung in the Arkansas Ozarks today. Ready?
All set.
Well, let's go.
Is this all you have with you?
Well, a ballad hunter doesn't need much equipment. All you have to have is something rugged like this that'll take those mountain roads and those section roads down in the rice country, and a tape recorder and plenty of tapes. And most of all, you have to have a genuine love for people.
You mind if I take off this coat?
Well, you better take it off. Nobody in the Ozarks wears a coat in the summertime.
Before we start, just what is a folk song? How does it differ from any other old song?
A folk song is a song that lives in people. One singer teaches it to another without benefit of sheet music or printed words or records. In fact, publication of a folk song tends to imprison it. But the real test of a folk song is oral transmission. It's taught by singing and learned by hearing from generation to generation. Shall we get going?
True, true to my love, love if my love will be true to me.
Ballad singers like the people we're going to see used to provide the main form of entertainment in these isolated areas.
Where are we going now?
We're going to see Mr. Donny Hammondtree, a long-time informant of mine.
Informant?
That's just a word we folklore collectors use for the people that we get our material from.
I got it. There's Mary again.
What you doing this time, Donny?
Oh, I'm drawing water to soak my pigs up so they'll hold slop. It's so dry around here they won't hold slop.
Donny, this is Charles from mine.
Glad
He
to know
likes
you,
to
Mr.
hear
Ryan.
people sing folk songs, too.
Nice to see you, Donny.
Thank you.
Do you feel like knocking off work and singing some songs for us?
Oh, gee, it's too hot out here. Let's go in the shade of the house, and I'll sing you a new one. It's not a new song, but then I've never sung it for you, and I'll sing it for you.
Oh, good.
Fine.
The name of this song is Dick German the Cobbler. I learned it 70 years ago. Got the ballad from my cousin, Charlie Brandon. My name, it's Dick German the Cobbler. I've served my time out in camp. They called me a rotten potato, so I thought I had better repent. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, wingle. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, way. With my hub, blub, 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 blary, twack, party, roddy, do all day. But now since my roving is over, I've made some change in my life. But now as my roving is over, I've buckled myself to a wife. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, wingle. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, way. With my hub, blub, 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 blary, twack, party, roddy, do all day. My wife, she is blue-eyed and blinky. My wife, she was blue-eyed and black. She was the devil's grandmother for scolding, and her tongue, it went clickety-clack. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, wingle. With my wingle, wang, wingle, wang, way. With my hub, blub, 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 blary, twack, party, roddy, diddle all day.
Did you ever hear an old song about two sisters?
Two sisters? No, I never heard that song. But I'll tell you who does know that song. Ain't Sookie up Berryville way. Miss Bristow, you know. You stop at the Yoakum Creek store and inquire the way there. They'll tell you how to get to her house. She knows that song.
Gosh, pretty hot around these parts, isn't it?
Hot, fella, this ain't nothing. I can see you're a stranger around here in these parts. Boy, it can really get hot up here in these hills when it has a mind to. Say, Oscar, remember that year back in 1936?
I sure do.
Well, it got so hot up to my place, the corn went to popping on the ears right out in the field.
That happened on quite a few farms into here, I reckon. Popcorn all over the place. The damn stuff got 2 feet deep on the level and drifts against the fences.
You know, I had the team out in the field plowing that day. I reckon the horses figured it was snow, because they began to shiver so that I thought they'd freeze before I'd get them back to the barn.
It was a scorcher.
Well, so long, stranger.
Say, what goes with those fellas? They really think I was going to believe that story about the heat?
Oh, they've been giving you that old corn-popping horse freezing yarn?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's one of the favorite tall tales in the Ozarks. Vance Randolph put that in his book, We Always Lie to Strangers. Brother, you've been took.
We're coming in Arkansas. We're coming in Arkansas. Our 4-horse team will soon be seen in the hills of Arkansas. The men raise hands down there. Hunting is all they care. While the women plows and makes the corn and the man shoots turkey and deer. We're coming in Arkansas. We're coming in Arkansas. Our four-horse team will soon be seen in the hills of Arkansas. My name is Mary S. Briscoe. I was born and raised right here. Some call me Sister Sookie and some call me Granny. And I'm 80 years old. And my father was a terrible singer, good singer. And he learnt me the most of the old songs.
What are you going to sing for us, Sister Sookie?
Well, some folks want me to show out and sing something funny. So I guess I'll sing you Kissing on the Sly. They all laugh at that every time. When you make love with a pretty turtle dove, she'll linger all around your underjaw. You must kiss her for her mother, for her sister and her brother, till her papa comes to kick you from the door. Pulls a pistol from his pocket, pulls a hammer for to cock it, and declares he'll blow out your giddy brains. But your ducky says he mustn't, isn't loaded, and he doesn't, and you go to head to kissing once again. You want to kiss her, need to kiss her sweetly and completely. If you want to kiss her so as to kiss her nice. When there you go, kiss her, make a dodge or two and miss her, then smack her on and kiss her once or twice. Oh, the old maids love it, and the finger in the pie. They say it's mighty naughty, and they think they hadn't ought to. Bet your life they'll kiss you on the sly. There was a little family who lived in Bethany. 2 sisters and 1 brother compose a family. Oh, they were poor and needy. Their house was always open, which appears so good and kind. Their brother was afflicted and with disease confined. Poor Mary and poor Martha, they wept and loudly cried. But Lazarus got no better. He lingered on and died.
You still didn't find the song you were looking for.
I caught my limit just the same.
I'm glad I met you people and want you to come back again. We've had a nice time. And if you are still interested in them 2 ladies, song about the 2 ladies, why, you could probably find that at my brother Fred Highs, lives east of here. He knows lots of songs that I don't know, and he might know them.
Well, you said before that these old folk songs reflect the lives of the people who sing them. From what I've heard so far, many of them are about lords and ladies, heroines in fancy dress, heroes on white chargers, real romantic tragedy. Now, how does that reflect the lives of these mountain people?
In a sense, it doesn't. The ancestors of these people had to hew their living out of the mountain forest. They lived in log cabins, wore homespun, hunted for food, and many still do. They had no luxuries or fancy trimmings. Consequently, they gave color to their lives by singing of beautiful ladies in glittering dress, of riches and fineries and luxurious surroundings. They feel deeply about the story of these ballads. They're not just words to a song. Oh, that must be Fred High's place.
Children she had 3. She sent them away to the North Country for to learn the grammar. They hadn't been gone but a very small while, scarce like 12 months and a day.
Very strange, peculiar kind of melody.
It's no wonder he's singing in an old gapped modal scale. It's the untempered scale, a very old-fashioned form of music.
That used to wear a crown. Pray send me home my 3 little babes, for tonight or in the morning soon. She set the
Sounds almost like an oriental chant of some kind.
No wonder. Both the Oriental chant and this kind of singing use fewer notes to the octave than we're accustomed to.
3 little babes, come eat and drink of mine. We can't eat none of your bread, mother, nor drink none of your wine. Before the break of day, our Savior we must join.
Mr. High, do you know a song about the 2 sisters?
No, Mom, I don't, but I think I've heard Booth Camel of Cane Hill sing that song, but I heard that he was in a bad shape. A log had fell onto him, and he wasn't well right now.
Now what must that father have felt when he went to the door in the morn? There he found Mary dead and the child fondly clasped in its dead mother's arms. The father and grief passed away, and the child to the grave soon was born. And there's no one lives there till this day, and that cottage to ruin has gone. The villagers point to the spot where the willow wept over the door, saying there Mary perished and died from the winds that blew across the wild moor.
You can't keep a good troubadour down.
Well, I'm pretty well down now, Mary. But still, I thank God that I'm able to go. But you know, Mary, my muse has flown. My ego's dead, and hair won't grow on my old hard head. My vision's dim, and my motion's slow, but I can still thank God my whiskers grow.
Booth, this young man is from CBS television.
Well, I'm glad to meet him. I told you, Mary, if I live long enough, TV would come and get me.
Just how long have you been singing and entertaining people?
Well, ever since I was big enough, Mary. I didn't know any better when I was little, and I never outgrew it. I've passed my 82nd year. I only live for three things: love, laughter, and song.
Mm-hmm. And which one you like the best?
Love.
When does it ever pay off?
Well, love has paid off occasionally, and I'm very well satisfied with the payment.
Booth, I've been looking for an old song called The Two Sisters. Do you know it?
No, Mary, I don't know it. But I know a woman that I think sings that song. Miss Climbs. She lives down on Pepper's Lake. And there's going to be a big play party there tonight, and she may be there.
Take care of yourself and get well.
Well, goodbye, Mary. I'm glad you come. Come back again. When Joshua camped before Jericho's town, he blew on his horn till the walls tumbled down, and I blow my own horn with precision and skill. That's why they call me Old Wind Bill. David went round with a stone and a sling, and he beaned old Goliath, and later was king, and he ran with the wild bunch when Saul was alive. What could he have done with my old 45?
Swing those ladies round, round and round and round, 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 round and round and round, 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 round and round and round, round, round. Swing those ladies round. Swung so well, I'll swing her again. Swung so well, I'll swing her again. Swung so well, I'll swing her again. Swing those ladies round. Quit your partner and join ring. Quit your partner and join ring. Quit your partner and join ring. Swing those ladies round. Softly rolls on the white oak tree. The river flows with brandy
this is a play party. It looks like a dance to me. Why don't they call it that?
They'll not call it dancing. They call it playing games.
I don't get it.
There are three main differences between a play party and a dance. The music is sung rather than instrumental. They use a hand swing rather than a waist swing. And they say they're playing games.
Say, who's that over there?
That's Mary Jo Davis, a very fine young folk singer.
There lived an old lord by the northern sea, bow down. There lived an old lord by the northern sea, the bows they bent to me. There lived an old lord by the northern sea, and he had daughters 1, 2, 3. That will be true, true to my love, love, and my love will be true to me. A young man came.
We got it.
You mean that's the two sisters?
Came according there, the bows they bent to me. A young man came according there, and he took choice of the youngest there. That will be true, true to my love, love, and my love will be true to me. He gave this girl a beaver hat, bow down. He gave this girl a beaver hat, the bows they bent to me. He gave this girl a beaver hat, the oldest she thought much of that. That will be true, true to my love, love, and my love will be true to me. Oh sister, let's we walk out, bow down. Oh sister, let's we walk out, the bows they bent to me. Oh sister, let's we walk out to see the ships a-sailing about. That will be true, true to my love, love, and my love will be true to me.
Why, Mary Jo, where'd you learn that song?
Why, I learned it from my grandmother.
Here we've been looking for this old song from all the older people. Isn't it amazing we found it from a young girl?
Well, congratulations on the end of a very successful ballad hunt. And now that the business at hand has been taken care of, shall we?
Swing round that sugar and tea, swing round that candy. You swing round that sugar and tea, and I'll swing round that candy. Yum bum sugar and tea, yum bum candy. Yum bum sugar and tea, swinging is so handy. Lead to that sugar and tea, lead to that candy. You lead to that sugar and tea, and I'll lead to that candy. Yum bum sugar and tea, yum bum candy. Yum bum sugar and tea, swinging is so handy. Swing round that sugar and tea, swing round that candy. You swing round that sugar and tea, and I'll swing round that candy.
At the University of Arkansas, we are collecting folklore to preserve some of the elements of a passing culture. It's of value to literary scholars, to social historians, to linguists, to anthropologists, and a source of inspiration to writers, artists, and musicians. But we folklore collectors are impressed by the way these people make their own music. We ask ourselves, what should music mean to people anyway? Are we not, as a nation, becoming listeners and watchers of our own culture? can't we learn from these folk singers and folk musicians the joy and vitality of participating in a live kind of music?
That was those were the days, weren't they? Oh, I am unmuted. Yes, that was lovely. Anybody else want to ask Mary Celestia Parler some questions? I wish we could. No, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I do. Every time I watch it, I find something else in it. Everybody's smiling. That's good. All right, no questions, no comments. If you want to find that, by the way, we did put the link in the blurb for this meeting because it's not easy to find. You can search for Arkansas ballads and stuff, and you get a sort of truncated version. You have to go to the Periscope Films site to find it. It is free. You can watch it. Conrad has a question.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that. I worked in the city of Laurel for the longest time, northern PG County in Maryland. And I found that I did not find any songs. Nobody was singing. Nobody sang anytime. They played pool, they watched television, and everything else. But one thing that they did, a dimension of the oral tradition, it works in layers. They didn't have the songs, they didn't have too many stories, some stories, but the rest of it was ancestry and lineages, and it's heredity. When somebody would walk into the room, they would mention their name. Once they mentioned their name, you wouldn't talk to these people for the next hour, because they were going, he's a Smith, or she's a this, or that. And they would do the whole genealogical tree, and then you might get them to talk. But it was a dimension of the oral tradition that not many people give credit to. It was interesting to see the early work. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Conrad. Well, ladies and gentlemen, time to wind up. And we'll see you. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to Ciara and the other one, Paul, for their contributions today. Thanks all for coming, and we'll see you in a fortnight's time for another wonderful session of traditional song and stuff. Goodbye, fairly well. Have a good week.